Hello WriteOnCon 2019 attendees and a warm welcome to you. My name is Monica Hay and I'm a graduate student at Portland State University earning my master's degree in book publishing. I also work with literary agent Laura Bradford at Bradford Literary Agency, and I am a freelance editor for middle grade manuscripts and young adult manuscripts. I'm really excited today to talk with you guys about the query pile. I hear a lot of different things about the query pile from all sorts of different sources, and I wanted to just kind of talk about the truth about the query pile today, or the slush pile as many people call it. I want to give a quick disclaimer that these truths are not for every agent. Every agent works differently, and some agents will read the query first and then they will read the manuscript. Some agents read the synopsis, some agents read the manuscript first. It really just depends on the agent, and every agent has their own preference. So these are the tips that I'm giving you based on my experiences with Laura at Bradford Literary Agency. Another thing to mention is that in this video, I will not be talking about how to craft a query. There will be agents who talk about how to craft a great query in this conference, and so I recommend going to them and watching those videos or listening to those talks and getting your information from them. So let's start with truth number one. The first truth is that yes, your query really is everything. And when I say your query really is everything, I mean a few things. One is that your query is representing you as an author and representing your work. It should represent it as accurately as possible, and it really should be something that portrays what your work will look like in the market. It talks about your bio and talks about you a little bit, and it gives an idea of what the story is about. But my first point is that it should be probably relatively straightforward, and it must be well researched. For example, I really like reading queries that get straight to the point. I like direct queries because that way I don't have to guess what's happening in the story. I really like when I see comp titles very quickly. If you don't know what a comp title is a book or a movie that might relate to your story or kind of match your story that is already published or already out, usually within the last 3 to 5 years. The reason I say the last 3 to 5 years is because the middle grade, YA, and children's book market in general changes very rapidly, and so you want your comp titles to be very recent so that it represents the most recent sales. Another reason that queries are everything is because that's the first thing agents sees when they consider you, and it's your first impression. And so when you really want to give a good first impression, it's really all about that query. That leads me to my second tip, which is being humble goes a really long way in this industry. That might seem strange, but it's very true. I have definitely had experiences where I've read queries that the person is comping Harry Potter, or they're comping Percy Jackson, or they're comping something that is extremely well known. It's actually a turnoff when people do that for agents, because it's so overdone that it makes you look like you don't really know what's happening in the market. You want your comps to be realistic, and the bottom line is that saying you're the next J.K. Rowling or the next Stephen King might just make agents roll their eyes, and I often do when I'm reading through queries, and that's a comp. So avoid comping things that are so popular that they've been done a million times. The next tip might be confusing since I just gave you that tip, but it's actually that while your comps shouldn't be extremely popular like Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, they shouldn't be super obscure either. For example, if one of the comps you're using only has 20 to 50 reviews on Goodreads and there's very little buzz about it online, I would probably steer clear of that comp. Not because it's not a great book, but because you want to make sure that the agent knows which book you're talking about when you comp it. Otherwise, they will think, well, what's that? Agents are very knowledgeable in their field, yes. However, they can't read everything and they don't know everything about the market. So I just recommend comping things that they will recognize when they see it. Often, you can also use a movie. My book is The Hazelwood meets Spider-Man. That sounds like a really cool book, by the way. That's just an example of the way you could structure a comp. Yes, you can use more than 2 comps. One of the first things I look at when I look at the query pile is usually comp titles, because I'm really curious to see what kind of books are being written and what kind of books are being compared to. So I really recommend taking your comp seriously. The next tip is that agents usually know within the first 3 to 5 pages if your book is going to be for them. That isn't to say that they won't keep reading, or that they won't maybe send the book to a reader or an intern to perhaps be a sounding board for them, but just know that that's why that first 1 to 5 pages or 1 to 10 pages is so important in your book, is because that's, again, another first impression of your novel. The query might be the first impression of your novel in the sense of the storytelling and the plot and maybe a pitch, but the writing itself that's the first impression in the first 1 to 5 pages. So you really want to make sure that that is well polished. The next tip goes along with that, and it's that voice is also very important. And voice, the best way I can describe, is a very distinct character. It's the kind of thing that you start reading a book and you just realize that you love the character so much, or that you're interested in the character and their perspective, and so you just want more. Plot does this too if it's a really, really exciting plot. However, you can't fake a really good voice. Voice is what makes people want to know what happens because they're just curious about this person. Agents are always talking about voice, and that's just the best way I can describe it. So I really recommend making sure that you know your characters well and that you work on them as much as possible so that their voice really shines through. The next tips can vary from agent to agent, but this is kind of what I have learned in the query pile. Your bio is very important. However, you should be thoughtful of what you put in your bio. And by thoughtful, I mean, I wouldn't say things like, I have been writing for 10 years and I love it, or my husband read this and loved it, or my 10-year-old read this and loved it. We kind of already know those things. Those things are kind of assumed. Let's assume that you probably enjoy writing, and it's assumed that your friends and family have maybe read your book. What should be in your bio is things like, I am a member of the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, or SCBWI for short. Or if you've gone to a conference, if you've gone to workshops and workshopped your book before, that's something that you could mention. I just wouldn't mention the really simple details because we don't really need to know those things. Another thing I'll mention about bios is that you want to take it seriously because agents are not only looking to get your book, they are also looking for career authors. They're looking to see who can I build a career with and who can I work with professionally for years to come. You want to make sure that your bio has information about you that they can go off of. Yes, agents are going to definitely stalk you on Twitter, Facebook, etc. But you really want to just take it seriously when you have a bio. Don't just skimp on it because you think, oh, they're not going to read this part, because they want to know who you are because they're going to be working with you for the rest of your career. Another thing I'll mention regarding relationships is that you should be reading very, very widely in your genre that you write. So for example, if you write a ton of middle grade fantasy or you love middle grade fantasy, I would recommend highly that you read all sorts of middle grade fantasy. Read the blockbusters, read the ones that are less known, because these people are going to be your colleagues if you get published one day. And it's really important that you know your market. There might be times where you are going to a conference and you meet an author who wrote a book that is popular or slightly popular and you haven't read their book and you'll feel really embarrassed about it. It's relationships that kind of keep publishing going, and so I really just highly encourage you to read as much as you can in your chosen genre so that not only can you be well versed, but you can also encourage your fellow colleagues so you can keep up to date on the things that are coming out and in general just be part of the community that book publishing is. The next tip might seem very strange to mention, but I think it's important because I don't think this is talked about a lot. When you title your query, first of all, yes, you should follow house style. So for example, if the agency says, please title it this way, then do exactly as they say. However, if the agency does not have a very specific way that they want you to title your query, do not put your name and then query to Laura Bradford. I would recommend putting your last name and then the title of your book and then putting maybe a dash and saying young adult own voices fantasy or middle grade spooky stories, things like that. You want to show the agent what your book is going to look like when they open it, because sometimes agents will look through their query pile and they'll be in the mood for a certain thing, and maybe they see your query and they see the title and they see that it's a young adult fantasy. I'm in the mood to read that right now. And so they open it just because they're in the mood to read that at that time. Give yourself the ability to be that person that they suddenly randomly read because they're in the mood. And also it makes it easier for agents to, in general, organize their query piles. Don't waste your precious space with this is a query to this person, because they will know who you're querying as long as you put Dear Miss Bradford or whoever else you're querying. I wanted to just mention at the end that yes, this process can be very daunting. I totally understand. I'm a writer myself. I write young adult fantasy and I am writing a book. It's scary to think about putting yourself out there, and it's scary to get lots of rejections. Agents receive 10 to 100 or more queries per day, and so there's a lot of competition. However, I will just say that you are doing the right thing by attending conferences like WriteOnCon. You're doing the right thing by educating yourself, because that's really what it's about, is educating yourself on the market and knowing what to do when you start querying. Making sure that your book is as strong as possible. You know, I would just recommend doing all the things that you're already doing. And again, I will reiterate that every agent is different. So some of these tips will apply to agents and some of them will not apply to agents because they just have totally different preferences. So just remember that you should always check what the agent's website says and do lots of research before submitting any queries. And if you have any questions at all, I'd love for you to reach out to monicahay@gmail.com. I'm open to answering any questions. If you're also curious, you can check me out on my website at monicahay.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoy the conference. Bye!